is that coding is already hard. Writing code and solving small problems is already a difficult thing to do.
Learning to code can be extremely difficult.
Coding is hard. When I first learned programming, I struggled to understand even the basic concepts.
Getting started with coding can be really difficult.
This video we're going to take advice from 5 YouTubers, and I want you to take a pen and paper and write all of those advice. Write the name of the person and write his advice, and at the end of this video I'm going to tell you all what I understand and the patterns.
Look at all this math you need to learn in order to become a software engineer. And there's so many technologies and programming languages that it feels like you'll need your whole life in order to catch up. And the first lesson I'm gonna teach you is learn by doing. The reason why people struggle to learn how to code is the same reason why people are bad at math. People are just too lazy to practice problems and power through adversity. The second lesson that I'm gonna teach you is learn to program, not a programming language. This is a very common misconception, especially beginners often confuse learning a programming language, that is syntax and grammar, with learning to program, which is the actual difficult part. Sure, in order to be able to program, you will need both programming language and knowing how to program it. The third lesson that I'm gonna give you is to create a roadmap for yourself. As beginners, many people just search Python on YouTube and start mindlessly watching YouTube videos just because they heard that Python is popular, so I'm gonna learn Python. No, that is not the way to approach this. There are so many programming languages, there are so many technologies that you can learn. The first question that you need to clarify is, what do you want to build? Once you figure that out, you can work backwards to understand what are the technologies and programming languages that you need in order to build this thing. Now, my fourth lesson is to prioritize understanding over everything. This is probably the simplest, yet the most important advice that I can give you in this video. You have to take the time to understand what you're doing. Last but not least, the fifth lesson that I want to teach you is get used to failing. Learning as a concept is simple, but it's not easy in practice. When you win, you don't learn anything. It's only when you lose that you actually learn something new. So these are the 5 lessons that helped me become a better programmer.
Tech with team.
I guarantee you that until you learn these 3 things, you will struggle to write code. Fortunately, once you learn them, coding will genuinely seem effortless. Now, the first of these 3 things is syntax and program structure. You need to understand how your language works. You need to have the fundamentals down. You need to know how to write basic code, and essentially to have all of the tools in the language you need to be able to solve a specific problem. Now, the next thing you need to look at is debugging. If you can be a good debugger, effective, and not get frustrated when you run into an issue, you're really going to see yourself advance a lot as a developer or a programmer, and you're going to be able to make a lot more progress a lot faster. The next thing that's really going to help you get better at programming is understanding how to plan before you code. Let's get into planning. Now, the basic idea here is that coding is already hard. Writing code and solving small problems is already a difficult thing to do. What makes it significantly more difficult is when you need to break a task down into smaller tasks and figure out what you're going to be doing while you're writing code, which is actually the way most people end up doing things.
The third in our list is Bio-Nauyan. I don't know whether I said it correctly, but let's go with that. Bio-Nauyan.
Hello and welcome. Let's dive in. First of all, consistency. If you have watched my videos, you know that I'm a huge fan of discipline and consistency. Writing just a few lines of code every single day is much better than having a burst of motivation for a few days and then stop coding. If you want to get good at coding, just code every single day. I don't care if it's build a website, solve a leak code problem, or contribute to open source. Just do something. Practice makes perfect. Blogs try to overanalyze the best way to learn coding. But the truth is, there's no perfect path or perfect course that can make you become a better programmer. I would rather pick an average course and finish it, rather than wasting my time and mental energy trying to figure out a perfect plan. The only way to get good at coding is practice and experience. If you don't know what programming language to choose, just pick one and learn it. If you don't know whether or not full stack development or game development is for you, then make a website, then make a game. See which one is more enjoyable. You learn. And finally, embrace failure. I recently read a book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Mason. It was a fantastic book. So the underlying message of the book is nobody is perfect. Problems and failures are a part of our life and happiness. And that's true. I'm not saying that I'm an expert or I'm a very successful programmer, but from my experience, I get to where I am right now because of my failures. If you keep doing what you need to do, you will get to where you want to be. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoy it.
Is Puja Dude.
Getting started with coding can be really difficult. Pretty much it. So let's get into it. The first thing I changed to make coding easier was focusing on one thing at a time. Now, I know that's easier said than done, but the old me didn't get the memo the first time around. I would always get really excited about deciding to start to code, but would get immediately overwhelmed anytime I tried to begin. I would search for courses on Pluralsight, Udemy, and Coursera, which, by the way, there are hundreds of courses out there between just these three platforms. How the heck do you know which one to even choose? Well, I would tell the old Pooja to just choose one. Choose anything, in fact. Alright, so the next thing is finish. That's it. That's your next piece of great advice. That's not even a real sentence. What I meant was, don't leave things halfway done, or in other words, half-assing your studying projects and readings. Try to finish everything that you start regardless of how long it takes. It's so worth it. Next tip is embrace failure. This one may be self-explanatory, but there will be days where you mess up. You may watch a tutorial on binary search trees and then try to traverse one the next day. Your code won't work, you'll keep getting index out of bound errors, and your patience will run thin. The worst thing you can do is to give up. It's okay to fail. Most people do, and to be honest, it builds character. This will help you be a better coder because there are times where you'll spend hours on a leak code problem, poured your heart and soul into trying to find all the islands in a 2D matrix. Your code runs with the scenarios and adapt to overcome friction. The fourth tip is to actually learn the theory behind what you're doing. I know, this is an unpopular opinion. Theory is so boring. I'd rather just get started coding. I know, just chill. But if we've learned anything from Dr. Strange, when you're a world-class neurosurgeon who breaks her hand and stumbles across an ancient realm that's able to heal people with their mind, if you want to be a great sorcerer, learn the theory before you practice. And the last tip is to code. I know, that's kind of a cop-out tip, but you don't need to understand everything perfectly before starting to code. You definitely need to understand things well before moving on to the next topic. This goes hand in hand with all the previous tips. Choose one thing to focus on, finish that one thing, embrace micro failures, and learn the theory behind it. But while you're doing all those things, you need to actually be coding. Take the time to actually sit down, write a for loop, give yourself a pat on the back, create a non-primitive type and populate it with data, create a class and add methods, local variables, and follow these tips. Coding will start to become easier and easier every single day. You don't necessarily need raw talent, you need to develop traits that help you overcome difficulties and build curiosity.
Last but not the least, we have Nick White.
Learning to code can be extremely difficult. When I first started coding, I used to struggle a lot, but over the years, I learned a bunch of different things that have really helped me in my coding journey. So in this video, I want to share those things with you today, so maybe you can skip some of the struggles that I went through. All right, so the very first thing I want to talk about is resources. The number one reason I think a lot of people get held back as programmers is that they're using bad resources. Whether it's learning to code or looking at documentations and tutorials to learn a new technology, a bad resource can be extremely discouraging. A bad resource might leave you confused and you might question, why can't I comprehend this? And you might actually blame yourself or doubt your own ability to comprehend things. You might be like, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for being a programmer. I can't understand the fundamentals. Foundational knowledge of programming is like the roots of a tree, providing the support and nourishment the tree needs to grow tall. Everything is building blocks built on top of this foundational knowledge. So while it might seem exciting to jump into advanced topics like machine learning right away, if you try to do that, you're going to fail miserably because there's just going to be so much foundational knowledge that you're missing, and you need that to understand more advanced and complex ideas. The next thing that you should focus on to make coding a lot easier is problem solving. At its core level, coding is problem solving. And being a successful programmer is not just about writing code, it's about using code as a tool to solve problems. To be successful as a programmer, you'll need the ability to conceptualize and understand a problem. And what any good problem solver comes to learn is that you'll take a big problem and you'll split it up into a bunch of smaller problems. These smaller problems will be much more manageable than the bigger, more complex problem, and you can solve those one by one. Being a good problem solver is being creative and innovative. Solve them. The next thing everyone has to focus on to be good at coding is consistency. This one is pretty obvious. Practice makes perfect. The more you code, the better you're going to be at coding. You might not want to hear this, but you should probably be coding every day if you want to be a good programmer. The last and most important thing I think you should focus on if you want coding to come easier to you is track your progress. I don't think a lot of people have thought about this or talked about this in videos, but I think tracking your progress is extremely important nowadays. You know, there's a common saying on the internet, pics or it didn't happen. If you think about that, it's kind of true, and you might actually forget a lot of the things you've learned or worked on in the past because you didn't document or track your progress. Clearly forge a path forwards as a programmer. So I used to struggle with all of this stuff when I first started learning to code. So this is all of the stuff I wish I knew when I started coding. I would focus on all of these things, and I think if you focus on these things, it'll make coding a lot easier.
This is all there at the Bytes, and I'm going to tell you what I learned. This is the 5 things I understand. The number 1 thing I understand is they are all telling the truth, but based on their experience. You know, everyone learn programming in different way. So what I understand on all of their advice is the same thing. They all learn the programming in all different way. So they are telling the truth based on their experience and based on the path they follow. And the second thing I understand is, I understand that coding is not easy for everyone. I thought coding is not easy for me, but back then now I realized that it's not easy, not only for me, but for everyone. And the third thing I learned is you need to be consistent. You have to write code every single day for you to become a better programmer. And the fourth thing I understand is everyone path is different. Some people learn by just watching YouTube tutorial. Everyone learn in different way. The more you code, the more you understand programming, even way more better. So please let me know in the comment down below which favorite advice based on those YouTubers.